Cull Bucks, myth, misunderstanding, or the truth about making room. You know, every year we have debates online and at hunt camp with our friends and family. Should I shoot that cull buck? Some say yes. Maybe it's an ancient 6-point who's been hanging around the farm. You've got some historical data on him for a few seasons. Maybe he's got a jacked up side, right? He was bit by a snake or he was hit by a car, whatever it may be, or bad genetics. And so others think, no, it's a waste of a tag. And so the question isn't about what you feel or what you prefer. The question is, does culling a buck or removing a buck actually make a difference in a wild, free-range setting? So let's break it down. So what is a cull buck? A cull buck is simply a buck that landowners or land managers want to remove so that it doesn't breed and pass its genetics on to future deer. Some reasons can include sickness or illness or odd traits, maybe non-typical antlers or wacky antlers like we talked about that are genetic based and not due to an injury, or even like small antlers, right? Like back to the ancient 6-pointer that we talked about. We've all seen those. And so there's a lot of reasons why someone might want to remove a buck to prevent it from breeding or culling it. And so on the surface, that sounds like a really good idea, right? Remove the weak, leave the strong, but that's not how it works in the wild. The genetic myth. Sure, in really well-managed, highly controlled, like high-fence scenarios or research facilities, biological research facilities, yes. They are able to take specific genetics and pass them on down the line to future deer, and that's how they're able to grow like these 500-inch monsters, right, over time. But in the wild, that's not how it works with genetic saturation and the fact that deer move. They breed and travel across property lines, right? And so, I mean, we've all seen that one buck. We seen him over here one night, and then a couple of nights later, we were out spotlighting, and you see him 3 miles away. And so, removing one or two bad racks is not going to affect the genetics in your deer herd. And so, because when you kill a buck, all you do is you create an opening for another buck. And so, the buck that actually slides in and breeds those does could also be a low quality animal, right? And so there's no guarantee when you even kill a cull buck that you're going to get a better buck that moves in. You could get a worse buck. And so the idea that you can fix the genetics in a wild free range herd by removing a couple of bad apples is a myth. The real factor, generational nutrition. More often than not, poor antler development is due to poor nutrition. I live in the southeast, land of pine trees and sand, right? So we have a lot of starving does, and that's why we have a lot of really low quality bucks in the southeast. And so oftentimes a cull buck is just the son of a starving doe, right? And so by providing that doe with better resources, maybe it was a hot summer or a bad mast crop year, or maybe soybeans turned to tobacco and a food source she can't eat. And so starving does birth really low quality bucks. That's a fact. And so sometimes by simply just providing your deer with more nutrition is all you need to do to get better quality bucks. It's just something to consider the next time you think about killing or culling that 4-year-old because he's 110 inches and you don't think he's a winner. He's probably a fine buck with fine genetics. He was simply born to a starving doe that had a hard year. And so maybe by providing some year-round nutrition to the does on your property, you can fix your antler problem instead of removing bucks unnecessarily. Let's talk about what actually works. Net buck displacement. I've been running more than 100 cameras now for more than a dozen seasons. And if there's one thing that I've learned in the wild is it has nothing to do with genetics whatsoever. It's all about real estate. Only so many bucks can live in a bedding area, right? So it doesn't matter if you're managing private land or if you're scouting a public land thicket. There's only so many high security daytime bedding areas to go around, and mature bucks don't like company. If your best spots are home to some local, genetically average bucks, the odds of another buck coming and pushing them out are pretty low, especially when they hit that 3 to 4 year old mark, right? And so by simply creating a hole by removing a buck for another buck to move into that daytime area, that is what's called net buck displacement. So by removing a genetically average or a low quality or a wacky racked buck, you're not affecting the genetics whatsoever, right? You're simply managing your real estate and you're using it to create net buck displacement. It's simply about making space. After all, think of it like you rent condos and you're trying to make sure that you have a vacant condo for when that big buck shows up this fall, You should always cull with intention, not emotion. You got to ask yourself the things we talked about. Has this ancient 6-pointer been around for a few years? Do I really think that he's historically stunted? Is the nutrition, the year-round nutrition on my property where it needs to be, especially when does are having a hard time in the late summer and the late winter? Is the nutrition where it needs to be? Is that the problem? And thirdly, I would say, ask yourself, maybe that wacky rack buck, he has a snake bite. Is he limping or he was hit by a car? And so once you make an educated choice to remove that cull buck, just remember, you're not changing the genetics. You're simply managing a limited resource. The Cull Buck debate isn't going away anytime soon, so the next time it comes up, send them this video or simply remind them that they're not managing genetics, we're managing space. And so net buck displacement is real. It's measurable. It can be applied strategically, and so you can improve your odds at a mature buck without fairy tale sciences and moon magic. And so in my book, that's a cull that counts.
Ha 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 ha!